线上面试是非常方便，但是某些部分是需要你多注意跟多做準備的。那今天讓我們來教大家該如何有效的準備 online interview。Hello， 歡迎來到 Executive Plus 主管雙語溝通力的 podcast。我們希望帶給大家最實用的溝通工具，包括了成功人士對全球市場的分享、職場英語的技能、跨文化溝通技巧與其他能幫助您成為出色領導者的工具。Hi, I'm Sherry, founder of Executive Plus. As a language trainer and certified coach, I've trained hundreds of managers from Fortune 500 companies such as Dior, Google, Deloitte, and Yahoo.
And I'm Nick, Director of Communication Strategy at Presentality. I've helped startups raise millions of US dollars in funding and train the executives of publicly listed companies to present on the global stage.
Welcome to the Executive Plus podcast,
where you can take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everyone, welcome back to Executive Plus Podcast, episode 43. In this episode, we're going to cover how to do interviews online. Now, if you're looking for how to do an interview in general, go back and check out episodes 2 through 6. Today, what we want to cover is what changes when you are interviewing online, either as the interviewee or the interviewer.
那我们今天要来教大家，不管你是要面试别人，或者是你是被面试的人，一些在做线上面试你一定要注意什么。那我们今天会有不同的 focus， 比如说语言的部分啊，或者是一些 environment 的部分，或者一些其他的一些 tips and tricks， 想要来教大家要如何能够胜任这个 online interview.
When going into online interview,let's break it down to a few things. First, let's look at language-wise what changes between interviewing in person and interviewing online.
So I think the most important thing, and because you're doing this online, 在线上的时候，因为常常我们会有一些 technical difficulties， 就是一些 lagging 啊，这种部分有可能会发生，你必须要特别在这种 clarity 的部分要特别的加强，也就是这种精准度、准确度。那为什么要特别的去精准呢？要特别的重视这个 clarity 的部分，有一个部分就是，其实当人面对镜头的时候，你不是面对人家的脸 ，right? It's not face to face. 你面对人家镜头的时候，你很容易被 distracted， 你很容易就会你的那个心就会飘到别的地方。所以我相信你一定有这种经验。So that's why, I think in an online interview, doesn't matter if you're interviewer or interviewee, 你就要特別去注重這個 clarity.
To be explicit about the type of points you want to make, how many points you want to make, fixes a lot of these issues. One, because in a face-to-face interview, you may think and talk.So how many points may change based on, how you're reading someone's body language or what's going on. When you're online, because you can be easily distracted on either side, or because there may be that lag present, you want to be more explicit. No, there's 3 things I want to share with you. First, that idea. Second, that idea.Lastly, this idea. And what it really does is it creates a structured flow. So if someone is lagging behind, they know not to start talking until they've heard the 3 points. Or it helps someone to focus like, okay, they're going to cover 3 things. So I need to focus rather than, maybe someone's kid runs in from behind or, a message shows up on their desktop.They know that at least for this amount of time to get your point, they need to listen to these 3 things or these 2 ideas.
Right. And kind of going along with that, let's say you tell someone that you have 3 points and because of the internet connection issue that, I got the first, I got the third, but I don't think I got the second one. So you can actually directly ask, okay, could you repeat?your second point.
Right. Otherwise, you end up in this thing like, that thing you said like a second ago, back before, at first I think you were talking about this, and then you switched of it. It creates a lot of distractions.
Yeah.
But when you're able to develop that clarity and a clear structure when in this online environment, it helps people really make sure that you're in sync, that you're actually talking in real time.
Right. 而且一个非常重要就是大家都很不喜欢那种尴尬的感觉，所以如果你越清楚，讲话越清楚，不管是你的发音越清楚，或者是你的 structure 越清楚，你越可以避免这种 awkward moments.
Yeah, if you don't have this clarity, you can end up in these really weird places where everyone's like, I think this is what you said.
Yeah, absolutely. 那 and another thing, 就刚刚 Nick 有讲嘛，我们要有一种 order， 或者你要直接提到说 OK, 我要等一下要讲的几点。那你也可以把 giving direction, like telling the people where you're going with this conversation, where you're going with your statement. I think it's another really important thing. So you can say like, oh, as I was saying, or as you mentioned, you're going along with their point. 这个东西都可以帮助你把整个 conversation 会感觉比较 connected.
Right, because when you're in a face-to-face, it's very easy to rift. I say something, you say something, and I can be like, oh, you were just saying a second ago this kind of thing. But when online, you can't always guarantee that perfect connection. So you need to be more specific. Like, oh, as you mentioned in the previous question you asked me, or as I mentioned when walking you through my resume, being very explicit about where I want to highlight something helps keep someone on the same page.
Exactly. 那刚刚 Nick 有一直讲到 explicit， 那也就是当我们如果在讲到我们的很重要的重点的时候，你就可以很 explicit 去跟人家讲说 OK, 这个就是重点。So you can say, I would like to stress, or you can say, it is extremely important to know that.
Right. Again, in your online interview, if you're structuring this well, you really should keep things down to less than 3 points. We were talking about it's easy to get distracted, it's easy to have something pop up and pull away your attention, or technical difficulties. So if you're like, let me tell you the 10 best things about myself, or tell me your 10 best stories of working together, it's going to be really easy somehow to break that apart, whether it's a connection loss or whether it's a attention loss. So really try and keep things into those key points. Let me stress this key idea and just really stick to that. Finally, when you're wrapping things up online, we've talked a lot about in previous episodes that you need to do a recap. You need to do a summary. And we double down on that in an online setting because don't want people to get lost, or if something didn't perfectly go through and someone didn't want to make it awkward and stop you or correct you or have you repeat, having that final summary can make sure that your points really got through.
没有错。那其实在做这种线上沟通的时候，你这种当你讲话可能已经1分钟2分钟过去了，那你做一个很简单的 recap， 其实对于听的人一定是对他很有帮助的。So you can just say, let me do a quick recap. So we talked about this, or you can say, I talked about this. Next, I would like to know blah, 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 right?
Right. So that summary of, say, the total conversation, or even question to question, where if you ask someone a question and they gave you an answer, you might summarize and be like, what I heard is this. Is that correct? And if they say yes, then okay, next, I would like to cover this topic.
Absolutely.
Now, if you do miss some information or there's a technical difficulty, you can also use phrases to stop someone and get them to repeat.
So for example, you can say, oh, I'm sorry, but you're breaking up a bit. Could you repeat the last sentence, please?
Or, I think there was some technical difficulty on my end. Could you just elaborate on the last point that you made? Now that we've knocked out the basic language requirements, let's talk about the other dimension of an online interview.
所以我们第一个我们想要讲就是 background, 你的背景，也就是你的环境。那这个部分我觉得 很有趣是某些人对于这个认知他觉得当然很重要，可是有一些人就没有去想。So basically, if you want to do an interview, if you're at home, let's say you're at home, okay, you're in your bedroom, and you really don't want your background to be your messy bed or your unmade bed, because他可以 send 一个 message 就是你不是很在乎细节的人，或者是你是很凌乱的一个人。You don't want that. Definitely don't want that in an interview.
Yeah, the point would be is what do you want your background to say about you? Because let's say your resume says, I'm super organized and I'm, someone who cares a lot about structure and deadlines. And then behind you, your bed isn't made.
Yeah, absolutely.
You may think, it's not a big deal. It's just a bed. But an interviewer may look at that and be like, you're organized? Really? You have structure in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. 而且我们在之前的我们有讲到说，比如说你可以说，我是一个 eager to learn, right? On your resume, I'm eager to learn. So, and you mentioned that, I read a lot of books, I took a lot of classes. So, 你的 background 其实也可以去 kind of exemplify this by having books in the background, right? Just like nice books, really tidy on the shelf. So that would be a really nice background that you could have.
Yeah, and this also becomes a great prop in the future if someone's like, you say that you read a lot or you're a self-learner, what's the last book that you've read? And you can just turn around, grab the book and go, here, look, I read this particular book and here's a key takeaway. This is something that you couldn't do in a real interview unless, you bring your entire library. But because you've carefully set up what you're doing, it can become a great prop. So really your background can be really beneficial or really devastating to what you do.
Absolutely. 真的 background 算是一种可以当一个大大加分的一个部分。比如说 你可能你的 side interest 是 you like to paint, or you can just have a painting, right, that you made hang in the background to kind of, use that as a conversational starter. You can do that as well. 但这些都是有加分的效果，所以真的请你一定要注意，就是你的 background 不要那种很 messy or 很 distracted or 很多衣服啊，很多垃圾在后面，那真的是会让你 you will not look good for the interview.
Now, a lot of programs now, whether it's Zoom or Google Hangouts, provide the ability to change your background
your
to whatever you want it to. If you do to take this route, please choose something more professional. Your under the sea or in space background can be fun for your friends, but in an interview situation, what does your background say about you? Another option is, I would actually suggest people don't go after that option. And the reason being is because it's distracting, because the outlines around your body are not perfect. And when part of your face, or if you wear glasses, oftentimes that disappears into the program, can be really distracting. So I would just say, pick a really good room in your house, clean up your environment, and do that.
And another thing, when you're doing this online interview, this is like a benefit, right? 好处就是其实你可以把你的 resume 跟你想要准备要讲的东西都能够整理在你的荧幕上面了。
Right. All your cheat sheets, because they can only see what the camera can see. But behind your screen or on your screen, out of the camera's view, you can have as much information as you need. You can have your resume on there so that you can point that out for them to look at it. You can have bullet points, cheat notes. Now, this doesn't mean constantly be looking around and not looking at the camera, but it is a really great benefit because you can take these things into an interview. It would look really unprofessional and awkward, but because you're online, you can have whatever you need in front of you. Now, this does create a tricky thing is you can't always look directly in the eyes of the person. So how do you look at the camera properly?
Right, 所以这个部分其实是我常教学生的一个 tricks 吧。因为其实我们都会很习惯的看那个自己荧幕里面自己，但是其实这个不是 eye contact， 你必须要看的是那个 camera hole, right? 但是你看那 camera hole 真的很奇怪，你会觉得真的很没有感觉。So I kind of came up with this thing. 跟很多人讲说，那你在这个 camera 的后面放一个小小的镜子，不用很大的镜子，小小就好，就等于说你可以看得到自己讲话的样子。因为为什么呢？ When you're talking and smiling at the same time, it sounds very different from just talking. Yeah. 有很多人自己在讲话的时候，他不知道他自己的那种感觉是怎么样，或者是他有没有在笑。当你微笑讲话的时候，你给人家的感觉，当然对方看得到你在微笑，他的感觉也会比较好，对 interview 绝对是加分的。So, just put a small mirror behind that camera hold so that you can kind of look at yourself and know what you look like when you're talking into the camera.
Right. You can check your smile, you can check your eye contact. Because think about it, when you talk to anyone online, even in a non-interview situation, two things happen. One, a lot of times we end up just looking at ourselves.
Yeah.
Or two, it becomes really obvious when someone's not looking at the camera. Meaning they're looking at other things on their phone, or they're looking around, they're not smiling, they're slouching, etc. So you really want to have a way to constantly check yourself, but maintain that eye contact. So that's a great tip.
Absolutely. 那最后面呢, this is going to happen after interview. So don't forget this. You should always send out a follow-up email.
We talked about doing this in a normal interview, but in an online interview, again, for all the things that we discussed before, not every single thing that you say may come across clearly or perfectly for any number of reasons, including technical. So a follow-up interview to say thank you for the time, but also to recap something that you think is really important to make sure that they got that message becomes quite important.
Yeah. And lastly, you can just say, if there's anything that I could provide, please let me know. Yeah. So I think this is really important for any kind of interview, especially for online interview.
We hope that you enjoyed these tips of how to transition from the in-person to the online interview. If you want more information about general interview skills, go ahead and go back and check out episodes 2 through 6.
All right, so I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode today, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
如果你喜欢我们的 podcast， 欢迎来追踪我们的主管英文 Executive Plus 的 Facebook。那也可以写信到我们的信箱 yourcareerplus@gmail.com。